Bayshore.
And Bayshore. Hello, Bayshore.
And new person.
Oh, we have new people. Who are the new people? New people, stand up. All right. Well, for those of you who were here early, we had the most pleasant surprise. We had our good friend come in with the bagpipes playing loud and proud. Thank you. And he promised me he was going to play later on for us. Right, Bob? Okay. Well, as always, we start with a heartfelt prayer, especially today. Another Fort Hood incident. Another 4 of our heroes were shot down in their prime, and I'm asking Steve to please come up and lead us in a powerful prayer.
Okay, if we could just bow our heads for a moment, please. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to gather once again. We thank you for the fellowship and the friendship. We look forward to what you have in store for us this evening. We thank you that we get to live in this great free country and the opportunity to fight for what is right and good and true. We ask you to bless our troops, and we ask you to look over the families of those who are grieving today at Fort Hood. It's a travesty, and we can only bow our hearts and just pray and feel for them. And we ask you to heal their hearts as soon as you can, Lord. Just be with them. We ask that you just come before us tonight and let us feel your presence in the room. Guide us in our speech. Let it be pleasing to you. And we just ask the blessing on the food tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Would you all rise, please, for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. We're going to start our meeting with Steve, who's going to give us a quick treasurer's report. Very quick.
How many trillions of dollars do we have in our treasury?
We have absolutely no trillions of dollars at all. And our financial report, if we stacked it even in pennies, it will not reach the moon. Okay? Our balance at this point is $1,058.47. We've had no extra expenses this month, which is good. However, our current insurance for the year is due, and that is $421, and that will be coming out of that amount very shortly. Thank you.
Now, folks, this is going to be a very busy evening tonight, so we're going to kind of rush through the housekeeping. But I'm going to get your blood boiling a little bit and ask anybody here if they read about the ACLU intimidating 138 school districts here in New Jersey and told them don't even think about trying to stop illegals from entering our schools. Yeah. And then, what?
Or what? What was the threat?
Well, you know what their threat is always. Sue, sue. Unfortunately, again, Fort Hood, our military men were unarmed. Does anybody know who is the one who started that horrendous... Actually, wasn't. There was Jimmy Carter, and it was Clinton who pushed it all the way through. Of course, you heard that from MSNBC, CBS, ABC, and NBC. It was Carter and Clinton. It was.
Yeah, he did it in his first week of office.
I'm sorry?
He did it in his first week of office, Clifton.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Anybody read the article today that Mr. Charles Cook put out? You did, John? Okay. You all know who Charles Koch is, right? The Koch brothers? Those evil brothers who just want a country that abides by the Constitution. He defended himself in the is it the Wall Street Journal or
Wall Street Journal.
Wall Street Journal? One of the more conservative papers. So if you can, get it and read it. But as I said, we're very busy tonight. I just wanted to get your blood boiling a little bit. We have our very own, now we're going to do the housekeeping. Jason, come on up.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's that time of year again to start planning for our summer events. And if anybody was here last year, we had our fun summer event of the baseball game at Lakewood Blue Claws. Great show of hands, who went to that game? Okay, we're planning another one. Actually, we're planning 2 this summer. Since we had such a good time last year, we didn't have much time to plan the second, we're planning 2. Yeah.
Quiet in the balcony there.
So, I'm going to be passing it around. It's going to be the first one we're going to have on Saturday, June 14th. I figure Saturday's kind of much pretty open day for everybody. So we're going to move forward with that. For the second one, I'm thinking either Friday or Saturday. Does anybody have objections to Saturdays or have a preference to Fridays? Or should we just keep rolling for Saturdays? Saturdays it is. And I do notice, as we pointed out, that Bayshore Tea Party is here, and you guys are welcome to join. The more the merrier, so I will drop off a flyer to you. The flyer, each flyer has the information about the game, the dates, the times, the prices. This year it's going to be $10 per person, $7 for any seniors and children, and definitely do bring your kids along or grandkids. It's a fun day. We're not really talking politics. It's just a fun day for everybody to get together and enjoy a game in the summer. Parking is going to be $3 per car. Again, if you have a bunch of people, know a bunch of people going, you want to save a few bucks, feel free to carpool. And again, if you have your East Jersey shirts or any kind of Tea Party, patriotic shirts, we're all going to be wearing them as much as possible. So, just to show solidarity in numbers, that would definitely be a good idea. So, again, the flyer is going to have the sign-up form stapled to it. So, fill that out and bring your money, cash only, please, and exact change would be helpful, to the May 1st meeting. So you have some time to think about it, see how many of your friends, family, whoever want to come with you, and then at our next meeting, May 1st, bring the cash with you, and I will go ahead and get those arranged, and I should hopefully have the actual tickets in my hand to distribute at the June meeting, so we can meet up for the 14th. So any questions so far on the baseball meeting?
What's the date again?
The date is the 14th of June for this first one, and since we all agreed to Saturday, the next one will be the 23rd of August. For the June event, we're going to be having fireworks at the end of the game, and also for the August 23rd, the Blue Claws are giving away free hats as their promotional for that evening. Any other questions about baseball? All right, the other event we have for the summer is the Jackson Memorial Parade. We're still working out details. Unfortunately, the Jackson contacts there like to get everything done last minute, so confirming with them is usually a task, but we are expecting to be fully signed up with them, and that's going to be Monday the 26th, or whatever date that Memorial Day is. That's going to be starting at 10 a.m., and we're going to be getting more details in terms of meeting spots and everything for the May at the main meeting. Also, check your email and Facebook for any other, the East Jersey Facebook, for any other updates regarding the baseball game, the parade. I'm also going to try a 4th of July, something or another, a July event as well. Another piece of event business, we had our second bowling night this last month in March. We are having a very fun time. Anybody who has come to those, whether they bowl or just hang out, can attest to that. Again, it's at Howell Lanes, third Thursdays of every month, and it's going to be happening the 3rd Thursday of this month, whatever date that is, at Howell Lanes on Route 9, 6:30 p.m. Again, come and bowl. It's going to be $3 per person per game, $3 one-time shoe rental per evening. And if you don't want to bowl, just feel free to hang out, have a drink, have a beer, snacks, just hang out and shoot the breeze with everybody. So any other questions regarding the parade or bowling?
Yeah, let's challenge Bay Shore to a bowling match. Because I'm tired of winning all the time, so someone show up.
All right, I'm going to be passing around the baseball flyer, so if you see me walking around, you're interested, kind of wave your hand, and I'll come by and give you one. So, thank you so much.
Again, always we thank Jason for all his hard work. Thanks, Jason. Okay, Dan, I'm going to have you after Neil. So, we have one of our very own Tea Party members, Neil Garguilo, who has taken a lot of his own time to develop a precise talking points on how we, the Tea Party, can get united and be effective. So if you would all give Neil your undivided attention.
Need to get out here a little bit.
It's working.
You all know I'm not shy, I'm from Brooklyn. So I'm going to try to talk a little low into the microphone because I have a booming voice. First of all, thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Dan and Joellen. I'm back, so I ain't really going anywhere. And I'd like to thank all of you for all the hard work you do against such terrible odds that we're facing. So I'd like to open up with a scripture reading from Deuteronomy 21-4. When you go to war against your enemies and see horses and chariots and an army greater than yours, do not be afraid of them, because the Lord your God, who brought you up out of Egypt, will be with you. When you're about to go into battle, the priest shall come forward and address the army. He shall say, "Hear, O Israel, today you are going into battle against your enemies. Do not be faint-hearted or afraid. Do not be terrified or give way to panic before them. For the Lord your God is one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to give you victory." So, my business manager, Tony Spinola, sends me emails daily. I have a friend from Brooklyn, Ben, who sends me emails, and I get my own emails myself. And everything I see is very negative. They're winning, and they've practiced at this for 60 years, and the fruit of their labor is now. So I'm trying to, in my presentation, make you aware, which you are, because you're Tea Party people, you're intelligent and aware. And secondly, to unite. We need to unite on all fronts. So here's my presentation. I have a sign-up sheet at the end, and can answer any questions you have, in private, because Joellen and Dan have a schedule. and we have a special guest tonight. Okay? Here we go. Of course, you know who I am. I'm Neil Garguilo. I'm a family man, a businessman. I'm a patriot. I'm an American. And as an American, I'm very concerned about what's happening to us and the Constitution. These are troubled times here in America. We have corrupt politicians. We're not moral. We have Obamacare, and we have a million other things that are driving us down. We are on the verge of total destruction. Now, I've done a lot of reading in the last 30 years of my life, business, religious, etc. And I'm feeling this on me more and more. And it's getting me very concerned because we're on the verge of destruction. The window of opportunity is almost closed. But we can turn the situation around. How are we going to do that? God is the answer, number one. Yes, we can turn it around if we rely on God. He is the answer to our troubled times, and as He saved Israel from its many enemies, all things are possible through Him. So first and foremost, this is our first principle. We need a revival. Our founding fathers had it right. No government can survive without being rooted in a moral and civil society. This society was based on Judeo-Christian principles. We need a revival, a big revival, and this is our first principle. Just take a look into the future. Have you looked into the future at all in the next 20 years? Here's some of the things that I think is going to happen. We're going to have animal marriage legalized, polygamy legalized, pastors arrested for preaching against gays. Forget the Second Amendment, it'll be gone. Anti-speech will be forbidden. Christmas and Thanksgiving, be gone. Gay marriage is a federal law. Single-pay health care will be here. Government takeover of private pensions, and that troubles me because I have one. Boy Scouts are disbanded. Just forget about the Boy Scouts. Most corporations will be state-run. Public schools, they're already a wasteland of ignorance. It's going to get worse with Common Core. And the dollar is going to be devalued. This last point troubles me very much because the dollar is the world reserve currency. And I've read recently articles on it, and we're in bad shape. Maybe Bitcoin is going to replace it, or maybe the Chinese equivalent dollar is going to replace it. I don't know. Unemployment is going to be at 50%. Gangs are roaming the street. They already are roaming the streets now in certain cities. The police won't be able to interfere. This is no brainer. Pot is going to be legalized, then all drugs. Open borders, massive influx of illegals. 70% of our population will be getting benefits, like in Scandinavia. The average tax rate will be 75%. There's going to be a lineup of food for staples like milk and bread. 50 major cities are going to be like present-day Detroit. Meat is forbidden. This is a little joke kind of, but who knows with them. Government-controlled thermostats for heat and AC, they're working on that now. Automobiles will limited because they hate the car business, so bikes are in. Elders denied life-saving medical procedures from government board administrators and die. And one more for good measure, Agenda 21, no more single-family houses. We all have to live in apartments of 1,000 square feet. It's here. So basically it's socialism. On a flight back from California, I started to talk to the flight attendant. And I said to her, you know, California is a nice state, but, you know, they have a lot of regulations. They're like socialistic. She turns to me and she said, socialistic? They're communists, where communism is here. I grew up in Eastern Europe in a communist country. I know what it is. So my friends, at the very least, socialism is here. So what are the founding principles? We all know we're Tea Party members. Judeo-Christianity, limited government with checks and balances, free enterprise and capitalism, freedom and choice, power in the hands of the people, not kings and rulers and pharaohs or autocrats. So, who do they view as their founding fathers? You ever talk to a liberal? They talk so eloquently about Marx and Lenin and Engels, okay? And they think they're the best. And they love Castro. You know, all the Hollywood people go to Cuba. But, you know, they don't study history like I do and many of you do. Stalin alone killed 30 million of his own people. A lot of them was the military, that's why he was unprepared for the Nazi invasion. And the intelligentsia was gone. Okay, let's talk economics 101. And I won't bore you with this, but I want to play the March of Dimes. This is for the younger audience when we go out and talk to the younger audience. This is my daughter Caroline. Caroline, each of these dimes.
Her allowance?
She did better than that, baby. Represents $100. There's 10 dimes here, so this is your weekly pay. So put it in your hand, okay? So I'm going to take the first dime, which equals $100. This is state taxes. The next dime is federal taxes. The next dime is FICA. The next dime is real estate taxes. And we'll stop here. The next dime is, you know, the sales taxes in New Jersey. So Caroline, my question is, you got 5 left, which equals 500. As a hardworking person, and you are hardworking, are you happy that you only have $500 left?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
So why'd you give it back to him?
True story.
Okay, let's continue. Let's go to advanced economics. All right? So your household income is $1,000. Let me ask you a question. How much could you spend?
1,000.
1,000. Very good. Federal income taxes, that's the budget. It's $2.7 trillion. How much could you spend? He's correct. They'll spend 50 trillion and then you're in a deficit. The solution to that is a balanced budget amendment and a focus on erasing the debt, which is 100 trillion. Okay, the housing bubble. I like to talk about the housing bubble because they blame Wall Street, the greedy Wall Street people. But Wall Street is part of the problem. The government was part of it, too. In 1996, Andrew Cuomo, as HUD secretary, forced the Texas bank to make subprime loans. At that time, he called it affirmative action for loans. You don't have to believe me. Go on YouTube, type in Andrew Cuomo and subprime loans, and it pops up the whole video in 1996. When I saw that, I died. Okay, you got May and Mack, the two biggest supporters of these government-backed subprime mortgages were Congressman Frank and Senator Dodd. When told that the bubble was coming, they supported these programs even more. Then the bubble broke, and President Bush and Treasury Secretary Paulson had a press conference, and it reminded me of Neville Chamberlain with that piece of paper that they were flying in the air. The $800 billion is going to save America. Yeah. You want to know what I would say in Brooklyn. Yeah. So, Fox is in the hen house. So what does the uninformed American public do? This kills me. They make him governor of New York. A man that doesn't know the first thing from anything. Then, guess what Bonnie and Chris get? They could rewrite the housing bill, right? So we can have more regulations and make things worse. All three, in my opinion, should be in jail. They should have been put on trial and brought to justice. But no, they get promoted, so to speak. All right, answer this question. Do you think it's correct and common sense to allow people with no income, no credit rating, to get a $400,000 home, a loan? No, obviously. But that's what happened, and that's why we're in a big problem today. And as my son says, you have no idea, he's an accountant, where all this money is mixed in on the subprime mortgages. It's going to take us years if we can ever get out of it. So, who is this person? Who is this man?
Van Jones.
Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister. This introduces my topic, my next topic. Think of the press, he said, as a great keyboard on which the government can play. Sound familiar? Do you realize that the above housing bubble could have been corrected with a fair and open media reporting about it? They report what they want to support their side, which is socialism. In my life, I've never seen such a lopsided media like what we have today.
Neil, just
Yes.
Friday, only Fox News reported there's a man by the name of Booker with a Muslim name, Yabba Dabba Doo, as Mark Levin would say. And he said he was going to do jihad at Fort Hood. Nobody else reported it. Now, if that would have been out in the mainstream media, possibly what happened last night would not have happened. But it just confirms what you're saying.
Exactly. And, you know, Benghazi is one of the biggest scandals that we ever had. It makes Watergate look like milk toast. Did anybody die in Watergate? I think someone cut their hand, right? No, we had 4 people die, including an ambassador. And no one's held accountable. No one. It's a disgrace. They're the enemy within. So, let me give you an illustration. You're well informed. Have you ever heard of the Forgotten Depression of the early 1920s? I think we discussed this once before. I can bet very few have out in the public. You're well informed, like I said. The media has covered it up since it does not fit their political and economic point of view. Because you know why? The results, the stuff that was put in worked. The economic situation in 1929, 9 years before the Great Depression, was grim. Unemployment jumped from 4% to 12%, and our GDP declined by 17%. So how was the situation remedied? Believe it or not, I have a different view of Harding. You know, you always see that picture of him. He looks so dour in that black and white picture you see all the time, but the man knew what he was doing. He cut government budget nearly in half between 1920 and 1922. He cut the tax rates for all income groups. He reduced the national debt by 1/3. That would be nice today, wouldn't it? He kept the Federal Reserve, who actually is the enemy, at bay. The results of his policies. By late summer 1921, signs of recovery were evident. Unemployment was back down to 6.7%, and in 1923 it was 2.4%. All this was done without stimulating the economy a la Keynesian economics. You can't throw money at the problem, and that's what they did in the 30s, in the Great Depression. It didn't work, and it's not working today. Harding said we need a rigid and yet sane economy combined with fiscal justice, and it must be attended by individual prudence and thrift. You get what he's saying, that we have to put a belt up. Obama's giving out free cell phones, going on welfare. He's the exact opposite of what Harding said, which are so essential to try in this trying hour and reassuring for the future. No statute enacted by man can repeal the inexorable laws of nature. He was talking about economic, and that was from his inaugural address in 1921. The economy has a tempo. When you have bubbles, you have a recession, but you don't spend your way out of it. And it's historical. You could see it. Reagan did the same thing in the 80s. So in other words, stop these grand economic interventionist plans and tighten your belts, and it worked. The interventionist plans, stimulus plans, which we see today, and they were done during the 1930s, do not work. And that is why I feel the media is the enemy within. If they would only report what works and be fair and report things like a free press was supposed to do, then this wouldn't be happening. All right, let me give you a scenario. Behind the door. So, let's say you have two kids, and you're sitting in a room. The children are hungry, and behind the door was food, milk, bread, etc. All you had to do was open the door. Would you? Obviously. However, some entity appeared in front of the door and says, no, you can't go in. You can't. The entity had no reason for it, and the entity was powerful, or so we made the entity powerful. You are helpless. So who are these horrible people? Our energy policy. That scenario depicts our energy policy. We have plenty of energy, but we aren't allowed to produce it. Think about that. We have the energy, and we can't produce it. Okay. We have enormous supplies of coal, natural gas, nuclear, hydroelectric. In fact, we are now an energy exporter. We can build 25 nuclear power plants that will supply us with a huge amount of energy. And the fact of the matter is, the media talks about all the deaths related to nuclear power, but we've had none in America. None. Right now we have an employment boom in North Dakota due to our advanced technology called fracking. We are getting fuel for our needs from coal by fracking the shale. Our total economy could be mirroring this. Our economy is this way because they're forcing it this way, but we could be booming now. We can be, my point is, we can be energy independent in 5 years. You know why? Because we could use the coal, the energy from hydroelectric, nuclear, and at the same time have Little Manhattan Project and develop an alternate fuel source. You know, Edison developed the light bulb, the incandescent light bulb. Well, that was quite impressive then. Well, we could develop an alternate fuel source if we want to and put our minds to it. We are Americans. We stand, who stands in our way? Corrupt politician, green people, and the socialists. Last fact. They talk about wind power, those windmills that you see along the ocean. Everybody knows it's only going to produce 1% of our energy needs. So why are we going and putting so much money into those windmills? It's like Don Quixote. I mean, it's ridiculous. All right, the coming storm, and I don't like to be negative because I'm a positive person and I've felt victory. I know what it is to be successful, and right now we're not succeeding. The storm is coming. Mathematically, we cannot continue to print money and spend. The dollar will be devalued. It's not a question of will it, it is when, and I feel it's coming soon. So, do you want to spend $300 for a loaf of bread like they did in Weimar Republic in the 20s? That was a terrible time for Germany. Unfunded liabilities, as you know, it's $100 trillion. You never hear the media talk about that. And we are dependent on foreign oil, and we get involved in their politics. You will wake up one day and say, how did this happen? You remember 2008 when Bush and Paulson was there with that piece of paper? And everybody was going, subprime mortgages? And we were all looking around. Well, we're going to wake up, and you're going to be in shock of what's going to happen. And we are at fault because we don't want to recognize it, although I have to say the Tea Party does a great job of recognizing and trying. But the truth is, many people are just oblivious. They know something's bad. I've been talking to some friends, and even liberals are starting to say There's things wrong in America. All we want to do is forget about it, play computer games if we're in our 20s, and go out for dinner and just enjoy things as best as we can. All right? All the while, this could have been prevented. So what we must do now, what I'm expressing now is leapfrogging. The Tea Party would have been most effective 50 years ago, but now we're behind the curve. The progressives had 60, 70 years, and right now the fruit of their labor is coming to fruition. It's happening now. We're behind. So the business term is leapfrog, like Steve Jobs did with the iPhone. He leapfrogged BlackBerry. BlackBerry is almost gone. Okay? So we need to put our collective minds together, unite, and leapfrog ahead of them. We have to protest also because the media will take notice if we can get 1 million people in Washington 6 times a year. We got to combine all our legal organizations into one big legal foundation to fight the ACLU. I contribute money to the Thomas More Law Center, and they do good work, but they're like an ant on an elephant. We need to combine all the good Christian conservative organizations, whether they're Christian or not, it doesn't matter as long as they're conservative, and fight them united. Okay, and this one is really, really a big one for me. We gotta get rid of the Republican Party. And guess what? We have the apparatus in place to replace them. It's called the Tea Party. It's not that hard. Every state has dozens of Tea Parties. We have the apparatus there. I've been fooled once by the Republican Party, twice by the Republican Party, 3 times. I'm done with the Republican Party. Done. I can't stress that anymore. Then we got to force the media to be fair and honest, and it's going to be hard. But did anybody see that great video? Tony sent it to me. It was written by a conservative, and he was talking about voting for conservatism. You didn't see it? Well, you got to get your hands on it. Tony has it. I have it. It was done. It made Hollywood look like they were Boy Scouts. That's how good it was. So we have media people out there, if they need to come forward or conservative, that could attack the regular media and make them be fair. It's going to be tough, but that's what we have to do, and we have to unite. We have to send educators to teach this new story, which is really an old story, the Constitution versus the socialist. Education is very important, and my vision is to send out educators to all the states and just do this presentation if necessary, and have young people in the audience. They need to be unbrainwashed because the schools brainwash them. So, can we make this happen? Do you believe? I believe. Jesus said, I tell you, you can pray for anything, and if you believe that you've received it, it will be yours. That's why I keep going back. Joellen and I talk about this all the time. We need a revival because we can't do this by ourselves. To leapfrog, we need God. What we need to effect this action, we need to rally all the splintered conservative groups, whether legal, media, education, into one solid and overwhelming organization, just like the socialists have. Everything they do is in lockstep. They're brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. We need 3,000 ethical lawyers, 3,000 fair-minded media people, 8,000 educators, 2,000 IT people, 1 million good Americans to march on D.C. and protest 6 times a year, and the organization needs 30 million people. We need around 30 million people to turn the tide. The time is now. I'm asking you to join up. I'm part of the Tea Party, so the Tea Party is, as you heard, a critical part of what I want to get done. We need to have people on the phone bank calling all the states and getting the Tea Parties united, because we're all splintered. We do good things, but in business you have to focus. I've never accomplished anything in business unless I was focused and had a plan. We have a plan, but it's not focused enough. The window is almost closed. The time is now before the collapse. With God's help, we can turn America back to its founding principles. Constitutional government must be restored. The Constitution is being trampled, and we're allowing it. Trust in God, and we will again be that shining city on the hill, as President Reagan so eloquently phrased it. Don't let this moment slip by. The time is now. We can't wait until 2016. Hillary's going to be in. Person who's done nothing, but she'll be in. So we need to do it and act now. God bless America.
Okay, that was really awesome, Neil. Thank you so much for that. And we're going to have Danny come up and speak, because Danny is working with other Tea Parties throughout New Jersey as to what Neil is espousing. So, Danny?
Howdy.
Oh, wait.
Hello.
Wait.
What?
Hey, you all called up the White House and said, welcome back, Michelle. It's been about 3 weeks. Michelle's back. Hey, Michelle.
About 8,000 a night.
Yeah.
Gotta love her. Anyhow, good evening. I can't hear you. Thank you. Real briefly, just bouncing off what Neil said. We've been mentioned the Voice of New Jersey, Voice Over New Jersey project. We're having another meeting a week from this Saturday. Right now we have 34 groups that are committed to working together. There's no real structure, there's no president or anything like that. It's basically, right now, it's an attitude, a positive attitude of cooperative cooperation. It's, I forgot the damn phrase. We're all going to work together and try to put our best talents together. Some people are more talented on some things than others, and we're just trying to utilize these talents across the state. Eventually, Neil's big thing was to focus. It was an attitude of coordinated cooperation. That's the coordinated cooperation. Trying to focus on a couple of areas in the state where we can actually win. We have an actual statistician working on the various congressional districts to see where we will be most effective, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to work on those little areas. That's basically it. 34 groups so far. I don't know how many more we'll get. I don't really expect that many more, because there's only so many groups in New Jersey. But we do have, like, New Jersey Right to Life. We got the True to the Vote. Not adopted their New Jersey be something good. The True to the Vote. We got NJ2AS, the Second Amendment Society. We've got a bunch of various conservative groups that have agreed to work together and try to kick some butt over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
That's it. Woo! Now, one thing I want to ask you, please. Lose the fear. I know a lot of you are afraid to pick up the phone. Admit it. Who's afraid to pick up the phone? Raise your hand. Go ahead. Put your hand down. Wise guy. If there's legislation or you get an email saying, please call about this bill or this, pick up the phone and call your congressman. The people on the other end are nice as pie. They'll listen to you. They don't really care. You know, they're not going to really be upset. but they're going to register a lot of phone calls, and they're going to go in to say, yo, listen, we got like 300 phone calls this afternoon about this one issue. Maybe you ought to pay attention. And that's all you got to do is just activate yourself. Don't be afraid to call. You have a question?
No, just a comment. I've called many times. Many times they're happy to have you call.
Exactly. They're actually happy to have you call. They love me.
Yeah.
Because I argue with them. But anyhow, thank you very much. Have a great evening, and let's kick some butt, huh?
All right, we're doing well. Okay. Before we have our guest speaker, Rich Pizzullo, thank you, Rich, for coming and joining us. Steve wants to say a few words, and we're going to pass around the bucket now. And we have two gifts to auction off tonight. So, Steve, you want to come up, and who's got you got the bucket also, Steve? Good.
I can't be everywhere. You're not trying hard enough.
I'm not trying hard. I can't be everywhere. That's it. That's how we got in this trouble in the first place, isn't it? Okay, so I'd like to kind of do a little history tour that we do from time to time. And while it's a nice spring day, I want you to kind of imagine, if you will, it's a little bit warmer. It's summertime, 1776, and you're in Philadelphia. Of course, we all know what happened in 1776 in Philadelphia. We were in the State House at that time, the Independence Hall as we know it now. And it was a room a little bit bigger than this, higher ceilings, bigger windows, no air conditioning. And there was about the same number of people, 56 men. And they were battering back and forth and back and forth. They actually shut the windows so nobody would hear them arguing. After a while, the only thing you would hear was the sound of their hands slapping flies in the back of their neck. Wearing those nice wool suits and those horsehair wigs, they had to be really comfortable, right? Well, they were contemplating doing something that had never been done before. They were about to 56 people. Picture this group here. 56 of us. They were about to commit treason. And they were going to go up against the largest military power in the known world. They had no navy, they had no army, and they only had the support of about 1/3 of their countrymen, sort of like the Tea Party. So you had those that were leftists or Tories, and then you had those that were just apathetic and didn't know anything. And we were in the same boat. This vote almost didn't happen. They were going to go up against, Great Britain. And it's kind of like if we were to say we're going to go up and take on the U.S. and our military, or maybe even Russia. Would we challenge them? The 56 of us, could we take a vote tonight and say we're going to challenge Russia? How about China? Could I get 56 of us to take a vote to go after Haiti, for crying out loud? It's not going to happen. That's what these guys were going to do. So it almost didn't happen. They voted several times, and the vote was not going to pass. The vote did not pass because they did not have the full support of a couple of the states. They already knew that Massachusetts and Virginia were going to go our way. They were rabid for independence at this point. They had suffered enough. Pennsylvania and New York were the holdouts. And if they didn't go, they did not have the full support. It was just not going to fly. So Pennsylvania was split down the middle, 4-3. And one man ended up basically turning this whole vote. How many of you guys know about Robert Morris? Anybody know Robert Morris? There's actually a statue of Robert behind Independence Hall to this day, so you can go and read a little bit about Robert.
Morrisville, Pennsylvania.
There's Morrisville, Pennsylvania. There's a few other things. Robert has a few really distinguishing characteristics. He was born in 1734 over in Liverpool. Maybe you've heard of Liverpool, a little place where these little mop-top dudes came out of and did a whole bunch of singing. So he was born over there. He was left behind by his father, who was coming to make his fortune. He was a merchant. Came over to settle on the Chesapeake Bay. When he did, he left Robert with his grandmother. Robert joined him at the age of 13 and was sent immediately to school in Philadelphia. His father used to chide him and say, why don't you study more, and why are your studies failing behind? And he quite frankly said, I've learned all this man has to teach me. So at that point he said, okay, fine, and he sent him off to be an apprentice. At the age of 15, he was apprenticed to a Mr. Willing, and he spent 2 years under his tutelage learning all about doing counting house type things. So picture Mr. Scrooge, if you will, in Dickens' Christmas Carol. His master died 2 years later at the age of 17. He was on his own at that point, and he joined up with Mr. Willing's son, Thomas. And they had a 39-year partnership, and they became the largest import-export business in the colonies and then the United States. So he was quite a wealthy man. He did better for himself and married up a 20-year-old woman, 15 years his younger, Mary White. She was from down in Maryland. Her brother was actually a pastor at Christ Church right in Philadelphia. You've probably been there if you've taken any historic tours in Philadelphia. So he married there, Mary, and they had 7 children, 5 boys, 2 girls, and things were looking good for him. Then came the Stamp Act, and suddenly his fortune started to change. He wasn't really happy about the way things were looking. I'm going to lose some money on this deal. And then came the Tea Act, and Robert at that point had kind of had a few political appointments at that point, and said he was actually the maritime jurisprudence guy, and he was actually in charge of the port. So they were trying to keep the ship from landing. Unfortunately, they kind of snuck in behind another ship so they couldn't turn them around. They basically had 20% of the population all come out. They were rioting in the streets. They took the captain in, and they were able to convince him to take the tea that was taxed from Britain and send it back out. They did not have the same success that they had in Boston, and we all know what happened with the tea there. So the ship turned around, and at this point, Robert knew something was not going to work. So he started working on a secret committee that he was appointed to by Congress, or the pre-Congress actually, and he was using his international contacts in France and smuggling in weapons and other contraband to the U.S., or the colonies at that point, from France, and stockpiling these things for the coming impending war that they all saw coming. He was still a loyalist, and he was a British citizen like the rest of them, and he really was not going to vote to go for independence, and he voted no. So the first vote came up on July 1st, he voted no. And everybody was like, okay, we're going to have a problem here because it's 3-4 and we can't convince these guys. There was 2 people in the Pennsylvania delegation at that point. Mr. Dickinson, John Dickinson, you probably heard of him. He was a Quaker and he was a pacifist, and there was no way he was going to go. At that point, if anybody's ever seen the John Adams movie, you may have seen that Adams and Franklin convinced Robert Morris and Mr. Dickinson to do something that was kind of unheard of. They weren't going to not show up because it was their duty, and they felt duty was very important. Obviously, character, something Neil was just talking about, was very important back in that day. Integrity, that was something that was important to these men, and they were not going to shirk their duty, so they were sent there, they were going to do something, they were going to show up. So they did show up, but they did something different. They abstained. They did not vote, which allowed Pennsylvania to vote 4-1, and therefore it was a unanimous vote of 12 colonies. New York voted a month later. They did not have the votes, and they could not convince their party to vote. So there was 12-0. The colonies voted for independence and basically treason. At that point, Robert used all of his contacts and was very instrumental in preserving the colonies and turning us into a country. I've talked to you many times about my hero, George Washington, and while George still would have been a hero, valid on the victories on the battlefield, he was already a hero in the French and Indian Wars. He probably would have had a lot of problems. We just recently talked about the Battle of Trenton. His men were going to turn around and go home. They were all done with their enlistment. Washington had no money. All of the money that he got between that and the Battle of Princeton, both of which were successful, came from Robert Morris. Robert Morris gave $10,000 of his own money because the Congress had none, and it was getting worse. Congress's money was starting to become looked at as basically worthless. A couple years earlier, Robert had actually pitched an idea to Congress to start the North American Bank, and luckily they went for it. And so they were basically printing money that was known as Morris notes. Have you ever heard of a Morris note? Morris notes are what saved the U.S. in our bankroll, because nobody was taking the Congress's money. It was worthless. Over the years, Robert basically put up almost $2 million of his own money to pay our troops, to pay our debts. His personal Navy, if you will, his shipping interests, were used as U.S. Navy ships. His fastest ship, the Black Prince, was one of our first U.S. vessels. It was known as the USS Alfred, and it was captained by his own personal captain. Maybe somebody's heard of him, a John Barry. Later became known as Commodore Barry. Maybe you've driven over his bridge down south. Maybe you sat in traffic there. I don't know. Either way, Commodore Barry was one of our first captains, and it was on these ships that Mr. Robert Morris put together. Robert took it quite seriously. He convinced everybody to vote, and they did. And as they voted, they were taking that integrity thing seriously, that character. And when they talked about integrity, this is what they meant, that they were congruent. They said what they meant, and they did everything. Benjamin Rush described it as integrity. I mean a strict coincidence between your words, your thoughts, and your actions. So those 56 men laid out their 27 reasons, and they committed treason, and they sent King George a letter that said that you will not impede our God-given rights anymore. And they based it on Psalm 15. So here you go for the third time tonight you're hearing Scripture. Psalm 15, verses 1 through 4. O Lord, who may abide in your tent? Who may dwell on your holy hill? He who walks with integrity and works righteousness and speaks truth in his heart. He who keeps his oath even when it hurts. These guys kept their oath. And that oath is, what did they say at the end of the Declaration of Independence? We give our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Their sacred honor meant stuff. They had an opportunity to turn away. This man gave up most of his fortune. He gave over $2 million. It wasn't $2 million like, you know, I've got like 50 and I'm just, here's a little off the top. It was like down to the bottom of the barrel. If it wasn't for Robert Morris, there would have been no military, there would have been no victory. We would have never lasted 3 long years. Because we didn't start getting money from France and the Netherlands, the Dutch, until 3 years in when we finally had a big victory and we beat them at Saratoga. Then the money started coming in. They said, well, maybe these guys actually have a shot. 3 years. All came out of Robert Morris's pocket. So without Robert, we would have had a lot of different things. So he didn't mean it. He gave up his fortune. He was almost broke, and at one point ended up in debtor's prison for a little over 1.5 years. And Congress at that point passed a law to help Robert and several others, and they got him out of debtor's prison. And he finally was able to kind of get some things back together. He made a few bad investments thinking that all of these immigrants were going to come from the old world. And so he bought a lot of land in upstate New York. Didn't work out that way because now Europe was embroiled in the big French Revolution. So it didn't work out for him. He ended up very depressed, had some health issues, and ended up dying, not quite penniless, but in a small house in Philadelphia. So the bottom line is character does matter, integrity matters. And if we're going to do anything like Neil said, or we're going to have some kind of revival, people need to take that into consideration and start instilling that integrity and character back in our youth. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve, once again. Speaking about character, New Jersey Right to Life this year is honoring Dr. Ben Carson. So, please, if you can attend that, I think it's in May. Just go on New Jersey Right to Life website with Dr. Ben Carson. Great man. Okay. We're going to do the auction, the gifts at the end, because we're also going to have Barbara from Bayshore come up at the end and give us the tally on who we think should be our presidential candidate. So please, if you can, stay around to the very end. But right now, I'm so happy to introduce Rich Pizzullo, who does live in Freehold with his wife, Pam, and he has 3 children, but he'll give us all that. Rich, what a nice itinerary here. He worked with small and large businesses, law firms, accountants, barbershops, charities, manufacturers. He was a janitor, a dishwasher, salesman, and a business owner. He can handle a floor buffer. He knows how to handle an M60 and a 12 gauge and an SQL, which I don't know what that is, and I asked Dan, and G. Willikins, Dan didn't know. And a squeegee.
It's computer stuff.
Ah, see, Camille knew Dan.
What is it? I think it's computer stuff.
SQL, it's a programming language. SQL and squeegee, yeah.
He served on boards of nonprofits for over 20 years and has helped with recruiting and fundraising for numerous charities. He sounds like the greatest Boy Scout. Rich Pizzullo, come on up.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me in here. It's I gotta tell you, it's a pleasure to be out in the grassroots where people understand what it really takes to win elections. I've been going to Tea Party meetings around the state, and I'm always heartened by the response and the welcome that I receive. Let me give you a bit of a bio about myself. I was born in the Bronx. My parents moved us to New Milford, New Jersey when I was about 5 years old. I went to the New Milford public school system. I was one of the first classes to go through the New Milford Middle School that was built at the time. And then I was lucky enough to talk my parents into sending me away to boarding school. I actually enjoyed military school. I went to New York Military Academy. I've been reading Boy's Life since I was a Cub Scout, and in the back they had all these schools. And this looked like fun, and we went up and we looked at the school, and there were kids raking leaves on the quadrangle, and I said, oh, my mom makes me rake leaves. I can probably like this. And it turned out to be a good experience. But when I got to New York Military Academy, when I was 14 years old, I was in charge of five cadets in my squad who were a year younger, and one of them didn't have his shoes shined for inspection, and I had to drop and give my commander 20 push-ups. I learned a valuable lesson that day, that when you're responsible for other people and you're responsible for the operation, that has consequences, and you have to pay the price when your people screw up. That lesson, I'm so glad I learned it early, because having that sense of responsibility instilled into me at such a young age was extremely powerful, an extremely powerful lesson. I must have learned it pretty well because the Army gave me a full scholarship to Cornell University. In return for that, I gave them 4 years of active duty, but I stayed on in the U.S. Army Reserve because I did a lot of work training officers, and I saw the good ones left a lot because they'd be recruited away. And I always maintained that if you have a gift, if you have a skill, you have an opportunity to use that skill to help other people. And as I spoke to other officers who were contemplating getting out, I would implore them to stay and say, look, if all the good ones go, who's going to look after the young soldiers that enlist and trust that they're going to have a responsible officer and NCO corps? And so I worked very hard to keep recruiting officers and NCOs to stay in the military. And I'm very proud of that because it's important that if you have the ability to be a leader, then you owe it to people that offer to be led to stay in and do that. I served 20 years with the United States Army Reserve. I left as a major on September 1st, 2001, which was an interesting day to get out of the Army. My wife and I, we operate a computer consulting company in Freehold, New Jersey. And we travel, well, my technicians work everywhere from Morocco to California, Boston, a lot of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania work. And we work in every business you can imagine. We're the guys that hook your computers up and install them, and when the printer doesn't print, you say, hey, how come this doesn't print? So I spend a lot of time sitting next to people who are at their desks just trying to do their jobs. I'm there with the lady who scans your insurance card at the doctor's office. I'm working in the construction company where they're trying to get proposals out to get money back from, or process things through FEMA. I'm working with accountants who are doing your taxes. And this is what I've learned, and this is what compelled me to join into this fight and bring your message, this message, to the federal government. You're killing us. You're strangling us. I have first-hand experience in every industry you can imagine of how federal regulations are just choking the life out of us. The federal government has finally arrived. The federal government has finally arrived at people's desktops. I am not lying when I tell you when you sit with your doctor, there's a federal regulation that covers how long he pays attention to you before his computer goes on time saver. I'm not making it up when I tell you that there are builders that have to submit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of engineering up to FEMA and have all of them rejected. Meanwhile, there are people homeless in New Jersey trying to get rebuilt. There are charities for whom funding has already been approved through the Social Security Administration that can't get their money down because they continually change the regulations, the rules, how you log in. I'm telling you, the federal government has put themselves in every facet of your life. They're in your bathroom, they're in your toilet tissue, they're in your light bulbs, they're in your children's school, telling them what they have to learn, telling the teachers not only what they have to learn, but how they're going to teach. I can't for the life of me understand why teachers continue to support a party that continues to put a yoke around their neck. Ask, are there any teachers in the room? I have a question for you. From a professional point of view, what would make you a better teacher? More money or more freedom? More freedom. So why do they go with the money party when in fact what they're asking for is freedom, which is what we all have been endowed by our Creator with? And slowly, incrementally, like a frog in a beaker of water, slowly getting hotter, those freedoms are being taken away from us. And what is different about this year, what has changed this year, what is so special that I see happening all across this state is people have finally realized it's the federal government has arrived in their life. People used to not care about it. You know, at the time of the Civil War, the federal government, you dealt with them when you bought a stamp to put it on a letter, and that was about it. It's designed to help states manage their commerce and provide for the common defense. It's a federal government, it's not a national government. The founders absolutely intended that there should be no reason why the federal government should ever have reason or cause to go harass any individual. Because they've been through that. It's in the Declaration about he dispatches forth his officers to harass us. Do you listen to the radio? Hi, I'm Robin Thicke. The IRS is cracking down this year. They're seize your assets. They're actually trying to do that and keep us under control through the IRS, through Health and Human Services has an office. Anybody heard of the Office of Civil Rights? There is an office inside Health and Human Services called the Office of Civil Rights, and their job is to protect the privacy of your medical data. This office has been corrupted to such a degree that what they do now is they poach doctors with paperwork fines and criminalize the practice of medicine to the point where doctors are hopelessly oppressed just trying to run their businesses. I'm with a lady who scans your insurance card and she has to worry that the UPS guy doesn't see the screen. I'm with the doctor who runs the practice who's worrying about shrinking reimbursements and trying to pay increased benefits for his staff all the time when the IRS is coming after him because he's a high-income individual and the HHS is coming after him because he's a ready source of cash. They're poaching our industries. And everybody understands that now. People are starting to get the word. Now, we talk about the encroachment of federal regulation and how it's just squeezing the life out of us. The government will not shrink by itself. We need to commission our government, commission our legislators, commission your U.S. Senator to go to Washington, D.C. and demand that the size of government be cut down. You need somebody that's going to stand with Rand Paul, stand with Ted Cruz, and insist that the federal legislature do its job and control and restrain the federal government. We're not going to do that by sending somebody to Washington, D.C. that just wants to give professorial speeches and educate everybody about the things that are wrong in life. What you have to do is send somebody down into the coat room where politics really happens, where John McCain hangs out talking to other senators. You can't get a lobbyist in there. You can't get in there, but you can send a representative who understands your issues, who understands that those senators, by not doing their job, is actually squeezing the life out of you and your family. I don't need a lobbyist to explain this to me, because I see it firsthand. I don't need their talking points. There's nobody you're going to meet in the course of this race that has the ability to talk to a fellow officer like John McCain, Republican to Republican, man to man, and explain to him that, John, you have to stop fighting inside the Senate. We need to all come together. The party that we expect to get a majority in the U.S. Senate has got to unite behind a common cause. And the common cause is the rule book spelled out in one of the simplest free trade documents I've ever seen, called the Constitution of the United States. We the people empowered the government to help the states manage their trade and to provide for the common defense. They are strangling trade and dismantling the defense, and that should not be stood for by this people or any people. We need to stop that. We spend trillions of dollars to run the federal government. And the job of the federal government, it's in the preamble of the Constitution, is to preserve the blessings of liberty unto ourselves and our posterity. That's our job. Everything else that you hear the federal government talk about as being their job, well, we have to have a law, that is not their job. The job of the federal government is to preserve the blessings of liberty. And you don't do that by writing more laws, but when you pay guys $180,000 a year to write laws, and then hire hundreds of thousands of bureaucrats to write additional regulations, what do you get more of? More laws. We don't need more laws. We need to enforce the fundamental law, which is the Constitution of the United States. And we need to start enforcing that now. I could go through the Bill of Rights, which is the firewall that's supposed to protect us. The Bill of Rights is supposed to keep us safe from our government, prevent the onslaught of tyranny onto us. And yet that firewall has been breached. We see offenses in the First Amendment just by the controls they put on the things that we can say and do, and how you can raise your money and how you can run your races. The First Amendment is under assault. The Second Amendment is totally under assault. It's easy. Shall not be infringed. I can read. I don't have to be a constitutional professor. I understand what those words mean. We should be secure in our papers. And yet, if the Constitution is supposed to be a living, breathing document, how come they don't seem to believe that our cell phone calls are not the same as our papers? We have a right to our privacy, and the purpose of the Constitution of the United States is to protect us in that privacy. If we go through all the areas where the Constitution is being violated, we realize that the thing that's supposed to protect our freedom and for our posterity is being shredded right before our very eyes. And it's disheartening to hear people get upset when you say, excuse me, the Constitution says you can't do that. And they say, well, you're the Tea Party. Sit down, shut up, go away. Well, no. If we don't pay the price, and what is the price of freedom? Anybody remember? Eternal vigilance. That's it exactly. If people forget that, then the price you pay for failing to preserve your liberty is the end of mankind's last best hope on earth. And I don't want to see that happen. Not on my watch. Not when there's a chance to get to the United States Senate and make a difference. And with that in mind, I now face a primary where there are candidates who would also like to have this position. And I need to make a powerful case why this person, this computer guy from Freehold, New Jersey, who used to run a floor buffer, who rode an ambulance, went to military school, worked as a janitor, owned a business, fixes computers, led Boy Scouts, worked with the 4-H, been an active, vital member of my community, raised money for charities here and around the world, has a sense that we have to make the U.S. Senate responsible for the people again.
Yes.
So that's my case, why I think I should be a United States Senator. I think that I have within my fiber an understanding of the issues that need to be addressed inside the Senate as we go up there. I have the ability to communicate this with my peers in the Senate. I have assembled a coalition around this state that consists of the business owners, the medical profession, the professionals who work and suffer through these regulations, young people on campuses across the state, women who are stepping forward and saying, we have a contribution and we're tired of being derided. There is no war on women in the Republican Party. We're the party that makes opportunities for women. We're the party that embraces them. We're the party that actually went forward, watched Sarah Palin get nominated as a vice presidential candidate, and then raised protests when she wasn't recognized as one of the most significant women in the decade. That's just wrong. And where are these people, these liberals that say it's the Republicans that have a war on women? It's the other guys who are constantly deriding women, who are constantly treating them as secondary objects, not the Republicans, because we believe that we all have purpose in this mission. So we bring in the women and the families. We do outreach to minority communities. We actually have an urban agenda. That's going to surprise the heck out of Cory Booker, because the way to implement an urban agenda from a federal level is really to allow the states and the areas to implement their own and not do top-down programs. That was tried in the Soviet Union. That doesn't work. Camden is not the same as Detroit. And for that reason, you can't have a federal program pushing all that down, but we need to empower our states to assist in first of all, dealing with crime in the urban areas, because if we don't get crime under control, everything else is for naught. So we need to give the urban areas the ability to get their handle on crime. And we do that, first of all, not by passing more gun laws and limiting the size of our magazines. How about by using the existing laws and enforcing them and getting the criminals off our streets? That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
So if we reach out to the business community, the medical community, the special interests around the state that all think they're in this alone, and I include the Tea Party in that, because when you put 100 people in a room, and you do it a couple times a year, and you don't see anybody else, you tend to think you're on your own. But I have to tell you, as I go around this state, and I mean highly energized, highly motivated, highly enthused, committed Tea Party members, I think that there's a chance we could actually take this primary and take our seat back in the United States Senate. Because that really is our challenge. You heard about Cory Booker, right? He's 10 foot tall, 10 foot wide, has $500 million, and every star in Hollywood is going to move their trailer to New Jersey and campaign actively for him. It's absolutely impossible to beat Cory Booker. It's a big push. We should just forget about it. No reason to even try it. Lay down. Let's just all pay our checks and go home. No! When we were faced with the Soviet Union that Jimmy Carter tried to appease and contain, when the ball was passed to Ronald Reagan, he said, here's the deal with the Soviet Union. We win, they lose. And that's what we did in the Cold War.
That's it.
And that's what our foreign policy has to be, by the way. I take my foreign policy from the back of the dollar bill. Anybody have a dollar bill out there? You take out your dollar bill, and you look at the back of it, you'll see the Great Seal of the United States. It's an eagle. The eagle's looking forward. He's looking over his wing. And in his claw, in his leading claw, he has an olive branch. The interest of the United States, the interest of building global economies, the interest of all mankind are best served by always leading with peace and always leading with peaceful intentions. In his other claw is a quiver of arrows. Because when diplomacy fails, you need to be prepared for war. Prepared for war. As Washington said, we will always strive for peace, but the best way to prevent war is to be always prepared for it. And as an aside, if we dismantle our military and shrink it down, the NCO Corps and the Officer Corps is not like a ship you can take out of mothballs. These are trainings and procedures and practices that need to be maintained over and over and over. If we don't allow our military to stay strong and develop the young people to choose that as a career, when we really need a military, it won't be there for us. And that, my friends, will be a very sad day. So getting back to Cory Booker. Getting back to Cory Booker. He's big. He's got a big campaign. You know something? If you want to achieve victory, first you must seek it. You start out saying, we will win. We can win. We're gonna win. And then you say, and what is victory? Victory is Cory Booker getting a first-hand experience with unemployment. Let's do that.
That's what I want, yeah.
And the way to do that is not with a computer guy from Freehold. I can carry the message, but it's not about me. I mean, I don't have as much money as the governor. I don't have his campaigning style. I don't have his infrastructure. But what I have is the message that you in this room are sharing with me, and that is the American people would like their country back. The people in the state of New Jersey would like their state back. And we're tired of seeing our money go to Washington and then get spread all around the country. We are every politician's feeding trough that wants to solve the problems of the world. And that has to stop. And let me tell you, having 3 senators from California and only 1 from New Jersey is not helping us. We need to have 2 senators from New Jersey, and one of them has to have the initials Rich Pizzulo. So if that's what we're going to do, if we're going to get our brand out, if we're going to say, okay, well, that's the problem, you're crushing us, what's the solution? I mean, it's hopeless, isn't it? Full-throated, unapologetic, conservative republicanism as the playbook to solve the problems of the country is the solution to the problems. Fundamentally, that says, let's get back to the rules, because rules matter. And then, once we're obeying the Constitution, and our budget is in balance, and our military is strong, and our teachers are free to teach our children, then our country will be back in our hands, and our next generation will certainly enjoy a much better life than we've seen. And we have to unify. We have to come together. There's a lot of sniping. There's a lot of different, groups that all come. There's only one kind of Democrat, is a Democrat. And yet they keep trying to slice and dice the Republicans into different kinds of groups. We need to unite. And everybody has different issues that they like to pay attention to. Everybody has their one issue that they like. Well, here's a couple for you. Some of us are pro-life. Some of us are pro-choice. Some of us believe in gun rights. Some of us think there should be a little more control. Some of us think marriage equality is an idea whose time has come. Some of us don't want it anywhere near our neighborhood. Some of us think the death penalty needs to be enforced in every state. Some of us don't trust the government that we don't trust for anything else to know when it's right to put somebody to death. So let's take those 4 things right there. I learned in statistics that to figure out the number of permutations, you just multiply, and that's 2 to the 4th, which is 16 different combinations of what the ideal candidate is. So if there's 35 people in this room, it's entirely possible no 2 of you agree on what the proper stance is on that. And here's where Lincoln got it right. Lincoln said, a house divided upon itself cannot stand. And he was right. And the Democrats keep dividing us and dividing us and dividing us, so we can't stand and we can't unite behind the common message, which is we need to get back to the rules. And then we can fight all those other fights. But we need to get back to the rules and get the ring set established so that we can actually deal with all that stuff that we'd like to fight about. But right now, fundamentally, the rules are gone. So, the big divide is between whether we're going to be a country where the government, the ruling class, 435 people in Washington, D.C., decide from whom they take, what they're allowed to keep, and to whom gets, and how long they get, and for how long they get. Or are we a nation baptized in liberty, where individuals have the power and the risk to achieve their greatest result, where freedom rings? That's the big divide. Now, what Lincoln went on to say in that, it was a Senate debate, by the way, a Senate speech. Everybody know what he said next? I do not believe this house will fall. And I agree with him. The house will not fall. But what he said was it will become either all one way or the other. And that is true. What's going to happen in this country is it's either going to be totally where the government decides everything, or the people, through their elected officials, have responsible, controlled, restrained government, and freedom rings. That's the big divide, and it will become all one way or the other. And I can tell you, I don't think you have to guess anymore which side I stand on. Who stands on that side with me? I stand for liberty. I stand for freedom. I stand for the rule of law. All that is extraordinarily important. We need to teach that to our children, because freedom, as Ronald Reagan says, is not in our DNA. It needs to be taught to our children. And we're only one generation away from losing all of our freedom. And when we get put in a society where wearing a flag to school is considered an offense, where parents can't teach children their own values because Common Core will be monitoring them and finding out if the children are safe and not being exposed to negative thoughts at home. All this is coming and all this has to stop, and we need to stop that by coming together, winning this primary, and beating Cory Booker. I know a little bit about grassroots politicking. In 1996, doing grassroots, going to little meetings like this, with conservative-minded individuals, as an independent candidate running under the banner NJ Conservative Party, I managed to attract 51,000 people to the polls to say, yes, we believe in conservative values. We can do that again. And we can do much better than that, because this time, you're actually sending a grassroots experienced, full-throated, unapologetic conservative onto the Republican line, into the Republican battle, with the Republican message, which is your message, by the way. We need smaller government. We need to play by the rules. But you're sending that person into this fight, and for that reason, we're going to blow the doors off the electorate this year. But that doesn't happen by wishful thinking. It really does not. It happens with hard work. And opportunity is frequently missed because it shows up at your door in dirty clothes and it looks like work. But that's opportunity. We have the opportunity, if we mobilize our neighbors, to get our country back. We have the opportunity to get freedom back into the state of New Jersey and back into our lives. And what has to happen for that to happen is you need to get involved and get your neighbors involved. We know your heart's in it. You all do. You have been extraordinarily active and passionate and communicating. And now's the time to do some politicking as well and encourage your neighbors. Don't fight with them. Encourage them to pick a candidate. Just pick your candidate. Don't allow the other big enemy in this election to win. Everybody knows enemy number one is Cory Booker. What's enemy number two to the electorate, to freedom in New Jersey? What's enemy number two? Apathy. Apathy. Apathy is a huge problem, and we need to fight it. You do not overcome apathy through conflict. You overcome apathy through validating the feelings, validating the opinions of the person with whom you're talking. There's plenty of time to fight in the legislative matter later on. What you need to do is engage your neighbors, engage your friends, engage your family, and say, okay, you know who my guy is. I'm going to shut up for a minute. Who's your guy? So they pick their guy, and this is what I did, and it may work for you. I would tell people, I don't mind who you pick. I just insist you have a reason for picking them. And encourage them to pick their guy and tell you about them. And they might find out that it isn't really what they had in mind. And then you can certainly introduce the Rich Pizzillo candidacy to them. But that's how we're going to get it done. This is the year of the ground game. This is the year that everybody gets involved. Everybody calls their friends, calls their neighbors, gets the social networking working. Stay on Facebook, expand your groups. Be involved and encourage other people to be involved, because this is such an exciting race, because this year, for the first time in a long time, it's actually winnable. So, by all means, if you can do that, if you think that there's an opportunity to win back this Senate seat and give New Jersey proper representation in the United States Senate, then join me. Get on a sign-up sheet, let us find out who really wants to help out, and let's get to work. If you can help with money, this is an extremely important piece. I don't need I would like to have $2,600 donations, but it's the 25s and the 100s and the 250s. www.pizzilloforsenate.com. It breaks my heart when people say, we're ready to do literature drop, send us some stuff, and I have nothing to send. And that's where we're at with fundraising, because people want to be making phone calls, people want to be doing literature drops. People want to be involved. They want the lawn signs, the bumper stickers. They want to see this campaign taking on the energy that it has, taking on the energy that it can have, and being the powerhouse that we need to actually put Cory Booker on unemployment. So, are you about to shut me down?
Well,
It's time? Okay, then let me close. Strangers in the night? No. Okay. So you know where I stand on karaoke? So that's my real appeal to you. Please, don't let your neighbors sit this one out, and please, we have a contested primary all through the state. There's 3 other guys whose initials are not Rich Pizzullo that don't deserve as much support, that can't make as an effective case, that are not as likely to pull together the coalition that we need to help put Cory Booker on unemployment. And let's not skip this year, because we did not inherit this country from our parents. We're borrowing it from our children. And we owe it to them to give it back to them better than they found it. So by all means, let's get involved, let's get motivated, let's rock and roll. Thank you very much.
Sure. First one is for the esteemed Charles Krauthammer book.
Okay. Charles Krauthammer book goes to 278426.
Is there for Bayshore now?
Oh, these are great videos. Gettysburg and Gods and Generals. Go to 278425. Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich Pizzullo. Yes, thank you. The battle has just begun, folks, so get in gear. All right, Barbara, come on up, Barbara.
Up, time's up.
Not till I'm done. Actually, Neil before gave me a great segue into what I'm about to talk to you about, and I think after this, me and him are going to be BFFs. So, most of you are probably already know about this poll that you took about who would be the best president, and it actually was a press release. It was in the form of a press release. Now, when we sent out the well, first I will tell you how that turned out. So let me tell you that first. I need my glasses, so turn off the camera, please. Okay, the results of that poll were as follows, in order: Scott Walker, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Ben Carson, Mike Huckabee, Alan West, Susanna Martinez, and Sarah Palin. I was so glad she was on that. Now, this is what happened real quick. I sent out that first press release, and we had the groups that were involved, and it was fine. And then when I tried to get more groups, what I did was I went on a national Tea Party site, and I just literally called every Tea Party that I can find in every state. And I wasn't getting any bites. And I think they were focusing too much on the polling. And it seems we do have a lot of differences, and they saw Huckabee on there. Be honest with you, that's what they saw, and I wasn't getting anyone really interested in signing on to this press release. And in all honesty, my thought was for it to be more about the message in the press release than the polling. Because we're going to go through a lot of vetting. I mean, we could love someone now, and then they could turn out to do something, and then we're going to be standing there like, oh, that's what we supported. So I was more concerned about the message that we're sending to the GOP, and it's put in a much nicer way, that we will not accept a rhino. So I took out no rhinos. So what I did for the second press release is I took out the polling part, and I left it just with the message, again, nicely put, that we will not accept a rhino. And then the people joined. So because I know you guys are pressed for time, I'm going to just read you the groups that we now have that will be, we did 2 press releases so far, and we're going to have the 3rd one going out Monday, and I intend on, this is going to grow, okay, because it's been catching on. So the groups that are involved right now, signatories on the press release and the statement are Bayshore Tea, I'm not going to say Tea Party group for each one, we know who they are. Bayshore, East Jersey, West Jersey, New Jersey Tea Party Caucus, Ventura County, California, Aroostook County, Maine, Bakersfield Tea Party of California, New York Tea Party Coalition, which is a whole coalition of Tea Party groups, so we'll probably have more to sign on there. That's New York. Beaufort, South Carolina Tea Party. Did I say that right? Beaufort? And I want to move to South Carolina. I better get that right. Not with my Brooklyn accent. South Carolina. CNY Tea Party, which is the Central New York Tea Party group. Morris Tea Party group, that's New Jersey. Team New Jersey, New Jersey. Skylands Tea Party, which is a new Tea Party group in New Jersey. Tea Path, which most of you, I think all of you know who that is. Cleveland Tea Party, Ohio. Wood County Tea Party, West Virginia. And I'm waiting, which I think it's going to be a guest from the, it's Wisconsin, I forget the name of the group right now. But those are the groups that will be on the 3rd press release, and I'm hoping more will come because, like I said, it's starting to catch on. And so look out for that 3rd press release, and hopefully by the next one we're going to have lots more. So I want to thank you guys for being part of the signatories. Thank you.
So, pretty good evening, huh? Yeah! So, we are so grateful to have our very own Don back, who's going to lead us in our favorite patriotic song. So if everybody would rise, thank you all for coming. Please come back next month, bring a friend, and get involved. Hey Don, come on in. No. Sing with them.
Here we go.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
God bless you all. Thank you. Get home safe. Come back next month safer.